everyone. This is Pastor Dave Stewart of Destiny Preparation, welcoming you to our program and welcoming you to this weekend, the beginning of Passion Week. We call this Passion Week. It represents Christ's last week on earth in his natural body, his natural ministry, as he enters this weekend into Jerusalem. This is called Palm Sunday this weekend, and this represents Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, the final time or the final season of those times, because he's going to go in and out throughout the week every day for the first few days. But this leads to his final teachings and also to his crucifixion, to the Lord's Supper, and the death, burial, and ultimate resurrection of Jesus Christ. This is a special week in the Christian church, in the Christian faith. And so if you're a Christian, I want to encourage you, this is a week to pause some things in your life and to really stop, remember, recognize what Christ did for us, what God did for us through his Son, Jesus Christ. The Bible says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever should believe on him should not perish, but have everlasting life. On Christmas, we celebrate his birth, but on Easter, we celebrate not only his death, but his resurrection. We celebrate the fact that he has reconciled us. He has died to save us. Very, very special time. And so this Sunday we're having service. We invite you to join us here. Yes, the services are open for this Passion Week. We're excited to be able to welcome you in this week. Service on Sunday morning this weekend is at 11:30 a.m. You are cordially invited to come join us here in the sanctuary. We will be prepared for you. We're going to be celebrating the King. We're going to celebrate the King this Sunday. So come and join us 11:30. If you can't get here, you need to be connected here on a live stream, because we are going to have a celebration of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And throughout this week, special services. We will have a Wednesday night service. We'll also have a Friday night service for Good Friday. So join us throughout this week, even for our live services this week, Wednesday and Friday. And then, of course, Sunday, Easter Sunday, special time. You're invited to come and join us. This is a great time to step back out and step back into the house of the Lord. Of course, we still have seats separated. We still are sanitizing the buildings. The building after and before services, we're still using hand sanitizer. We're still doing things to protect everyone and be conscious. We're still wearing masks. But we can do that. We've learned how to do that and still celebrate God. So join us this week for our special services of Passion Week. We are looking forward to it. We're looking forward to the blessings of God in this house. And so come and join us. All right, now I'm going to take you to the Word of God. I believe this is a special word. This talks about the time when Jesus comes into Jerusalem. It's called recognizing the moment. And that last entrance, that final assembly, triumphal entry into Jerusalem for his final week here, there's a moment to be recognized. And there are those that missed it. You don't want to miss it. Don't miss it now. Recognize the moment. I pray this blesses you. Don't forget to tell somebody about the program. Don't forget to tell somebody about all the programming on our Facebook page, all the different programs that happen throughout the week, our YouTube channels we have for you. Our Instagram page is available for you. So many different ways for you to connect up, and make sure and tell somebody, share it with somebody, let somebody else be blessed. God bless you. We'll look forward to seeing you here at Destiny Preparation Church this week. Celebrating God, but you can celebrate wherever you are right now. Palm Sunday represents the beginning of Holy Week or Passion Week, as I described it earlier. It is the time in which Jesus is entering his final week of ministry on the earth. Let me take a little bit of this here, jumping from one thing to the next. Hope that worship was inspiring for you and enabled you to touch heaven and heaven to touch you. Jesus Christ was entering his final week on the earth in this earthly ministry before he transitioned to a higher priority spiritual assignment that he had that would take place by the end of the week. It was the time where we see his final actions this week, his final events, his final teachings, his final instructions to his friends, his disciples, to his followers. He was closing up his ministry, because the amazing thing, and I say this, I think, every year, the amazing thing is that he knew everything that was about to happen. He knew it. And when you think about what happened, that's an amazing thing to consider, that Jesus knew what was about to happen, but still continued down that course. There are some things I'm sure that you can consider in your life that if you knew they were going to happen, you would have shifted directions real quick. If you knew in advance what was going on down that road, if you went that direction, if you made that decision, if you went to that house, if you knew in advance what was about to take place, you would have said, oh no, staying home today. I'm calling in a sick day. I will be in my bed and not leaving today. Anybody know what I'm talking about? We would take responsive actions to protect ourselves against hurt, against things that might not seem to be in our best interest. It's always amazed me that Jesus now comes into the city of Jerusalem knowing exactly what is about to transpire. And what amazes me is that he still went in. The crowds there, the sound of the people, the thralls of everyone excited that he knew was about to transition from thralls of excitement to chants of crucify him. I can imagine him envisioning the same faces that he's looking at going in now to the gates as being the ones that'll be standing out in just a few nights looking at him saying, kill him, crucify him. We want Barabbas. All stirring through his mind and through his head. He's aware of it, but yet he still goes in. It is an amazing thing to me that he did that. The situation was highly visible, and Jesus at this time was highly visible because of all the miracles that had been taking place. In fact, it was just recently and not too far from here, just outside of Jerusalem, where he had caused his friend Lazarus to rise from the dead. The thing that was so unique about that miracle was that it was so public. There were so many people that evidenced it. There were people who knew of Lazarus and saw him dead. Not only had they seen him dead, but he had been dead for 4 days, put into his gravesite and sheltered away. And it was evident and obvious that this man had passed on. And here comes Jesus passing through 4 days later, crying out, Lazarus, come forth. And in front of everybody, where no questions could be asked, Lazarus comes hopping out of his grave, still bound in his grave clothes, alive again and well. The news of that miracle, amongst the other things that they had heard of him, spread so far and so fast. It was going through the countryside. You would think they would have had, cell phones back then, or had Facebook or something, because everybody was hearing about it even before he could get from one place to the other. The word was spreading. And so when Jesus came into Jerusalem, the word had spread of who this man was and what had happened and transpired. And people were interested, they were curious, they were excited for a whole lot of reasons. They had put together in their minds all kind of imaginative things as to what was about to transpire. This man, Jesus, who showed himself to be miraculous, and some dared to call the Son of David. Well, what's that all about? Son of David represented the prophetic utterances that were in the Old Testament that talked about the return of a Messiah. And in their minds, the return of the Messiah was a king. And the Bible had instructed that the only kings that would be in the Jerusalem or in the Jewish nation were to be sons of David. That his generation, God said, the crown was going to stay in his family over generations. And so they were excited and anticipating that Jesus, who was of the lineage of David, who had demonstrated such great miracles, who had been called the King of the Jews and the Son of David, would be the one that would come to give them deliverance from their captivity. They were stirred up. They were hyped. They were wild. They were getting all turned up because they hated being in captivity. And they were looking for a miraculous thing to come to deliver them. So I want to read for you just quickly the story. In these types of times, I think it's valuable for us to read and hear the stories, the scriptures themselves. So I'm going to read in the New Living Translation one version of this story
that begins in Luke chapter 19 at verse 28. I'm not going to talk about the whole thing, but I want you to at least hear it. In the New Living Translation from Luke 19 and 28, it says, "After telling this story, Jesus went on towards Jerusalem, walking ahead of his disciples. As they came to the towns of Bethphage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 disciples ahead. 'Go into that village over there,' he told them, 'and as you enter it, you will see a colt tied there that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you what you are doing, just say, the Lord needs it.' So they went and found the colt, just as Jesus had said. And sure enough, as they were untying it, the owners asked them, 'Why are you untying our colt?' And the disciples simply replied, 'The Lord needs it.' So they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their garments over it for him to ride on. And then the crowd spread out their coats on the road ahead of Jesus. And as they reached the place where the road started down from the Mount of Olives, all of his followers began to shout and sing, and they walked along praising God for all of the wonderful miracles they had seen. 'Bless the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory to the highest heaven.' But some of the Pharisees among the crowd said, 'Teacher, rebuke thy followers,' saying things like that. He replied, 'If they keep quiet, the stones along the road would burst into cheers.'" The word tells us here of the story of Jesus entering in, and the situation that he's entering into here is a situation actually of great controversy. There are a lot of different types of opinions and attitudes that are going on. As you can hear, there are some that are celebrating, there are some that are excited, there are some that are in resistance. There is a mixture of at least 4 different types of thoughts and opinions in the midst. First, there were the disciples, his disciples, that followed him daily. They knew him. They spent time with him. They recognized all these types of things about him. They had experiences around him. They knew what he could do. They had seen him demonstrate his power. They knew him as a person. They knew him as an intellect, how he thought, how he felt. They were familiar with him. And so they were very close to him. This group was very close to him and followed him in what he was doing. Then there was the crowd. The crowd were those who had heard of him. They didn't necessarily know him at the same level as his disciples, but they had heard about who he was and how good he was. They had the certain aspect of understanding of him or impression of him based on what they heard. They were enticed by the miracles, and they followed him because they were excited to see what he was going to do. It's another group of people that were around. These were the Roman soldiers, and they were around, but they were much less aware of Jesus. They didn't really know him like that. They perhaps heard some things going on. They heard there was a stir. Some man was coming to town, but they weren't as familiar with him from that vantage point. They were more concerned, if you will, surrounding keeping the peace. They were watchful of any rebellion that might come to pass in the midst of this. And so they were there, but they were not as connected as the others. And then there were the Jewish religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they were around, and they were all the way at the other end of the spectrum, because when Jesus came in, that wasn't a good thing for them. That was a very bad thing. They were disturbed by the fact that the crowd was drawing to him the way they were. They were uptight about it. They were angry. They were frustrated. They didn't like Jesus. They were concerned about the fact that they were losing control of everything and everybody, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to maintain control of the situation any longer. In fact, they thought the only resolution to this, the religious leaders now, the ones that should have known God, the only thought that they had was, we need to kill him. That's the only way to get the situation back under control. So I want you to see that there were all these different varyings of people and thoughts and impressions around him, from those that were familiar and comfortable to those who had heard some things and were excited, to those who maybe kind of heard something in the air but weren't really concerned, didn't really care, to those that absolutely despised him. All these different impressions mixing, intertwining together in and around Jesus as he comes through this crowd. And in the midst of all the celebrations that's going on, it's interesting to see Jesus' response, because you think perhaps he'd be a little excited. Perhaps we would have thought, man, now my ministry is finally taken off. People are supporting, people are ready. Now I can really pour into these people the way they need to be poured into. But the Bible shows us that Jesus' response to the situation was not one of joy, but that he cried as he entered the city. Think about that. All these celebrations, all these things going on, all this stir. You think perhaps finally we had succeeded, and here Jesus is weeping as he enters the city. Let me go back to that verse and continue reading at verse 41. We read through 40. But verse 41 picks it up and says, "But as they came closer to Jerusalem, and Jesus saw the city ahead, he began to cry. I wish that even today you would find the way of peace. But now it is too late, and peace is hidden from you." Strong words to a group of people who are praising him. Verse 43 says, "Before long, your enemies will build ramparts against your walls and encircle you and close you in. They will crush you to the ground," Jesus is prophesying, "and your children with you. Your enemies will not leave a single stone in place." Listen, because you have rejected the opportunity God offered you. In the King James, it says, "Because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation." What those words mean is that you did not recognize that which had come to you. In the midst of all the celebrations, in the midst of everybody shouting and jumping and being excited, in the midst of all their good feelings, there's something shallow, there's something missing, there's something lacking. Because even though they're excited, Jesus says, you don't understand what's happening. You are not aware of what's really going on. You do not recognize the moment that you're standing in right now. This is the hour of your visitation. In other words, this is the time where God's very presence has entered into your midst, and you don't get it. Your thoughts, your impressions are filtered by whatever your direction or your personal desires are. The crowds are excited because of what they can get from him. The Romans just want to make sure there isn't any kind of craziness going on. The Jewish religious leaders are afraid of losing control. That's how they perceive the situation. Even his own disciples don't understand what's going on in the midst of this hour. And so Jesus is standing in the midst. The very presence of God is standing in the midst. The spiritual answer for everything they need is right there. And Jesus is saying, you've missed it. You lost your direction, your way to peace. As a result of that, I have to tell you what's happening. Because you missed your moment, you don't understand who is visiting you right now. Saints of God, I want you to understand that no matter what we see and are impressed by right now, we must understand what is happening in the spirit right now. Not just a matter of the evidence that we see around us, not just a matter of the disease, not just a matter of the affliction, not just a matter of all the oppression that's going on, the job losses. It's not just a matter of those things. We have to be able to see the moment that is going on right now, presented to us by God. And if you get distracted by the wrong things, you'll miss the moments. The crowd was expecting an uprising. They were expecting it was time to overturn the Roman government. So they thought Jesus was coming here to be the king of the Jews so that they could have an uprising and a rebellion and be freed from their captivity. That's what they were looking for and expecting. The priests could not accept a Messiah that could not align with them. How could this possibly be the Messiah when he doesn't understand us? We're the holy ones. We're the ones that call on God. Do you understand how many priests there are today that don't recognize the moment? How many preachers that are out there that are so focused on what their needs are or what they want to do or the way they've done it that they're missing the moment in time that God is bringing into this house, into this place right now. Don't miss the moment. His own disciples, those that were with him, those that were supposed to know him, those that were supposed to be Christians, could not conceive of victory that could come from death. God, what are you talking about? We don't understand. We don't get it. We have an expectation of what's going to happen, and we don't know what it is that you're talking about. And understand, he plainly told them, and they missed it. Go back to Luke chapter 18, the previous chapter, verse 31. This is before entering Jerusalem. And Jesus was beginning to talk to his disciples about what was about to take place. And in some cases, he was a little bit unclear about it. He spoke in parables. But in this one, in Luke chapter 18, verse 31, listen to what he says. Gathering the 12 disciples around him, Jesus told them, as you know, we are going to Jerusalem. And when we get there, all the predictions of the ancient prophets concerning the Son of Man will come true. Listen, he will be handed over to the Romans or to the Gentiles to be mocked, treated shamefully, and spit upon. They will whip him and kill him, but on the third day, he will rise again. Can't be much clearer than that. The response in verse 34, but they didn't understand a thing he said. These are the Christians. These are the ones that were close to him, that were supposed to know him. These were the ones that followed him. It said its significance was hidden from them, and they failed to grasp what he was talking about. In another passage, a similar passage in the book of Matthew, I don't know if the sequence is exact, but right after it speaks of this point, it then transitions, and the next thing you see it talk about is them asking him, okay, God, but when you get into your kingdom, Jesus, which can I be on your right hand and can he be on your left? Do you understand not getting it? Because he just told them he was about to die. He told them he was going to be handed over to the Romans. He was going to be spit upon and crucified. And it went so over their head. They said, okay, yeah, but when the kingdom comes, where are we going to be? What position am I going to have? What rank will I have? Will I be a bishop? Can I be an elder? What kind of role am I going to have in the kingdom when we get there? Totally missed what Jesus was telling them, because they had a perception and a concept of what was about to happen. And that concept did not align with what Jesus was telling them. And so they missed it. You got to be careful that you don't miss the moment. Don't fail to recognize what it is. You got to ask yourself, how can you have been so close to Jesus and still not understand? This message is to the church. Because how could we possibly be so close to God and still not understand that God is talking and God is speaking? How can we be so close to him and not hear his voice in the midst of things that are going on? How can we be so distracted by the things that we see around us? How can we be so captured in fear and the ways of the enemy? How can we fall and let our hearts fall to the things that the devil is doing and miss the voice of God in the midst of it? Listen, don't miss the moment. Today we find ourselves in a critical moment, critical time. I believe that this time is key, it's crucial. It is an awakening from the presence of God. There is a response of God that's transpiring right now that no man can stop, no man can hinder. Look at how God has made every man and every woman come down to their knees, because there's nothing they can do to stop what God has released on the earth right now. No scientists, no minds. So many times we try to science our way out of things and rationalize and come to a way to overcome and achieve. Things get destroyed and we just claim we're going to rebuild it. We think we're going to fix it. Whenever we say God, with God's help, it's always what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. But now God has brought the whole world to its knees. And who's going to recognize that God is speaking? We're accustomed to seeing tragedy in different parts of the world. All kinds of things that have happened. Floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. Just like the Bible said. But it's always in another place. It's always fixable. It's always recoverable. Right now we're seeing lives, and I don't mean to make light of it, but we're seeing numbers of people dying that we cannot even comprehend. There are people that are working in hospitals who have done this all of their adult professional lives and can barely cope with what they're experiencing right now. I heard someone the other day describing a nurse how, they can't even finish off taking care of one person who's died before they have to just leave it and go right to the next. And they don't even have usually have time to kind of resettle and regain their composure before they move on. But they can't even shift gears. They have to go right from one to the next. And it's not till the end of their 12+ hour shift that they can finally breathe. After dealing with so much death and pain and sorrow, watching so many people close their eyes for the last time, watching so many last words, young people, older people, male, females, every day, worse and worse and worse. Can you imagine what that does to your mind, to your thoughts? Can you imagine how you sleep after something like that? Today, all the world has been shaken by what's happening. There's none of us that can sit back and just say it's the other people.